Tonight's topic, from problem to plate. According to NOAA, green crab is considered one of the most invasive species in the marine environment. It has few predators, aggressively hunts and eats its prey, destroys seagrass, and outcompetes local species for food and habitat. Green crab has the ability to cause millions, if not billions, of harm to the fisheries industry around the globe. So when asked, what can be done about the green crab problem? Maybe we could eat them? So today we're going to hear several knowledgeable people speak about the issue of green crab and how we can make the problem go to plate. So to start us off, we are really thrilled to have Sharon here, Sharon St. with St. Hours Clam Broth, LLC, who really helped kind of bring this program to what it is right now. Sharon, thanks so much. I'm gonna send it over to you, and then the floor will be yours. Thanks so much, Sharon.
Thank you, Brad. I wanted to give a shout out to my dad, Fred, on Zoom. I'm St. Hours and Company. We run a local seafood company in Weymouth. We've been in business for about 40 years, making clam broth powder, dehydrated clam broth. And I went to one of these events in 2019 and met some folks that were working on this problem. And that kind of evolved into me trying to make a dehydrated crab broth powder. So that's what you'll be tasting tonight, is sort of the predecessor to that crab broth powder. It's the crab broth itself that Joby's done some amazing things with. We'll be talking about the green crab as an invasive species. Mary Parks, who I met through Green Crab Org, will be talking about the green crab. And excuse me, if you have any questions about the crab broth, how it's made, where I get the crabs, I'll be happy to answer any questions for you.
So my name is Mary Parks. I am based in Providence, Rhode Island, but I run a tiny nonprofit that builds culinary markets for invasive green crabs. And I'm going to be talking today about green crabs, overviewing the invasive species, talking about culinary applications, a little bit of the work of our nonprofit, and also tying together some products in development and chatting a little bit about Sharon's broth as well. So to start off, invasive green crabs, just to give a little background, are one of the world's worst invasive species. They've been in Massachusetts for about 200 years. They're originally from Western Europe and can be found everywhere from northwestern Europe to North Africa. And since then, they have become a huge problem, specifically for shellfish harvesters, for eelgrass, and also specifically for oysters that Kelsey will talk a little bit about today. I think a really important thing to acknowledge off the bat is that not all green crabs are green. And this is part of the reason that a lot of people don't necessarily associate the crabs that they see at the beach or in the estuaries that they're exploring as being the same invasive green crab. This is a photo from Castle Island of 2 green crabs that I caught right before an event with Save the Harbor, Save the Bay. And a great way to identify that this is a green crab, again, is not that it's green, but looking at the number of points on either side of the crab's face. If you see a crab in Massachusetts that has 5 points on either side of its eyes, chances are it's a green crab. Now, one of the reasons that green crabs are so good at being an invasive species is a single crab can produce up to 185,000 eggs per year. That means that they can expand to new areas pretty quickly and reproduce a lot of young. Not all of these little baby crabs are going to turn into adult green crabs, but it's one of the reasons now that we're seeing green crabs all across the coast of the west and the east coast of Canada and the US. You'll find green crabs from Alaska to California on the west coast, as well as Newfoundland and Labrador. About down to Long Island Sound is when they start to teeter out on the east coast. You do see a couple of them occasionally in New Jersey and Virginia in the tri-state area, but their range tends to be focused primarily from Long Island Sound to Newfoundland and Labrador. This is another photo of a green crab, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about culinary applications. But for people who want to cook with green crabs on their own, this is a great example of a male versus a female crab. Male crabs, I personally like shucking for crab legs and using specific recipes for, where female crabs in the fall, as well as a little period in the spring and early summer, produce a delicious roe. This roe tastes really similar to blue crab and is a great swap for sheet crab soup. You can make a ton of different recipes for it. And as I go through ways to cook with green crabs, feel free to explore on greencrab.org different recipes, different culinary applications, and we also tackle how to process them in both a home environment as well as if you're a chef and cooking with them in the kitchen setting. To briefly overview green crab's invasive impact, and both Kelsey and Gabriela Bradt are going to talk a little bit more about green crab's specific impact, especially in the Gulf of Maine. But green crabs love to eat shellfish. A single green crab can eat up to 40 half-inch soft-shell clams in a single day. And they also love to eat oysters, lobsters, scallops, mussels. They also compete with native crabs and lobsters for food sources. And so this is taking away food and habitat from native crabs. Also, while green crabs are digging for this food, they often slice and uproot eelgrass. And eelgrass is a really important habitat for a bunch of different species that we like to eat, as well as a wide variety of migratory birds and turtles who stop in eelgrass to feast on food and their migration. And it's also a really important storm buffer and carbon sink. So it's one of the reasons as an organization that we've chosen to focus only on green crabs. I think that it's also important to acknowledge, while in New England we have very established populations for green crabs, on the West Coast, green crabs are a newer problem, and so they're looking towards New England as a warning sign. Invasive green crabs can also be found in Australia. They've recently invaded Japan. They can be found in South Africa. And we've been collaborating a little bit with scientists in Chubut, Argentina, who are really concerned about green crabs' invasive impact in South America as well. This is kind of a charismatic photo of green crabs. You'll see in this photo, a lot of them are green. And when we think of green crabs, a lot of the time, this is what people think of. This is coming from an event that we hosted with Kamai Maine and Shell and Claw, who has worked a little bit with Dr. Bradt as well. To give a little bit of background on our organization, we're a 501(c) nonprofit, and we take what we call a two-clawed approach to the green crab problem. That's responsibly building culinary markets for European green crab and spreading awareness of its invasive impact. And now I'm going to get into eating green crabs and also explore some ways that chefs all across New England have featured the crab on their menu and like to consume them. To give a brief overview, there are a lot of different ways to eat green crabs, from stock to soups and stews, sauces, roe that I mentioned earlier that you'll see a photo of right here, fermented into fish sauces, or fermented whole, for crab meat, shucked as legs, cocktails, and in soft shell form that Dr. Bradt has worked on a lot as well. I think one thing, though, that is important to acknowledge here is that green crabs are not as easy to pick for meat in comparison to other crab species. Green crabs tend to be a lot smaller and they have less meat in comparison to the rest of their body weight. So even though I have crab meat on here, and Ton Tai, who is based out of New Hampshire, has some incredible techniques for shucking green crabs, it is important to acknowledge that this is not the best crab for picking meat in a restaurant setting, and it's a labor of love when it comes to picking meat. But when we look towards their native range, there are a ton of different ways that people all across their native range cook with green crabs, and we specifically see them often being used as a flavorful base for recipes. You'll see recipes from Ireland, from Scandinavia, from Portugal and Spain, from parts of Italy and France, where they're frequently using green crabs to add flavor to stews or gravies or bisques. You'll also see that around Venice, people are molting them for soft shell crab, and they are also in the off season cultivating crabs, or not cultivating crabs, taking the female crabs for green crab roe, what they call massanette. And now I'm going to just go through some different ways that chefs across New England have featured green crabs on their menu. This is Kara Stadler's wonton and green crab noodle soup made with green crab broth. Kara is based in Brunswick, Maine. This is made with St. Hour's green crab broth that I'll talk a little bit about. This was created by Chef Yuji Irakura, who is a board member of greencrab.org, was just awarded Boston Globe Best Chef. And he's loved cooking with St. Hour's green crab broth in the kitchen. And he also have a recipe for green crab ramen on our website if you're curious. He is the chef and owner of Washoku Renaissance. This right here is spicy crab oil. If you've ever had a crab boil or like seen a crab sauce or spicy sauce on the side, that was the inspiration behind this. It's a great thing to top gumbo with, can also be infused into a cocktail, and is a really flavorful sauce that will stay good in your fridge for about 3 weeks. This is my twist on green crab scampi, made with Wolf's Fish frozen green crabs. It is really fun to shuck the legs off of green crabs because it kind of is like a baby version of a snow crab leg, if you've ever seen the crab boils with the big crab legs. And you can cook with them really similarly to cooking with peeled shrimp for a shrimp scampi or other recipes, or unpeeled shrimp, I should say. This is from an event hosted at the Levitt Theater, a green crab curry inside the shell. Serving inside the shell is a really fun way to capture some attention on a menu, add some color to a plate, and a lot of restaurants love putting the dish inside the shell also for events that you might be handing out the crabs to, because you can have a little dish that is the crab shell and the dish inside of it featured at once. This is a green crab chawanmushi from Barfuto in Portland, created by Chef Jordan Rubin, with a crab oil atop. It's an egg custard of sorts, really fun to make with green crab stock and crab oil. And then this is a croquette that we have a recipe for on our website, made with green crab roe and potato, a really big crowd pleaser. If you want to explore more recipes on cooking with green crab, head over to our website at greencrab.org/recipes. And we also have 2 advisory networks that are totally free to join on our website. And the goal of these advisory networks is to increase chef participation in the fishery and harvester participation in the fishery. We have free toolkits on these through these advisory networks. And we also partner with chefs and harvesters all across the East Coast to host free events and, again, increase participation in the fishery. These are 2 cocktails that I whipped up for New Year's Eve. And something I think is really exciting about these cocktails is neither of them were made with live or even frozen green crabs. So first you'll see a cocktail that has a little crab claw hanging out. I use St. Hour's green crab broth to make a really simple crab brine behind the bar. And one thing that's fun about this is it's as simple to create as a simple syrup. And I don't know how many of you have seen all the trends this year about dirty martinis popping off, but this was really the year of the dirty martini. And we had a lot of fun making this recipe that consists of gin, St. Hour's crab brine, a little bit of celery bitters, and why not garnish it with a crab claw. Behind, you're going to see a hot and crabby, which is a twist on a hot and dirty martini that's often made with pepperoncini brine, a little hot sauce, as well as vodka. And we used Maine Garum Company green crab garum for this recipe. Garum is a fermented Roman-style fish sauce, and Liam Fisher, who's based in Midcoast, Maine, has been tinkering on a recipe for it. And it adds a lovely hint of umami to the cocktail. Super simple to whip up behind the bar. And you can find both of these recipes on our website. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about green crab products. I touched a little bit on the garum that you'll see in this photo. However, you can also, if you'd like to, you can purchase frozen green crabs, and they can be shipped to your house if you prefer, in 2-pound packs from Wolf's Fish. This was really, really exciting to see frozen green crabs hit the marketplace because it's a way to easily transport crabs not only to chefs, but to home cooks. And you can find them on Wolf's Fish website if you're interested. This was from the St. Hour's product showcase. So Sharon St. partnered with Chef Yuji Irakura and Green Dragon Crabs that you'll see in this photo, and has been working on the green crab broth that you'll all have a chance to try today. This was a really fun event, and that ramen photo that I showed earlier was from this same event where Chef Yuji worked with Sharon's broth to create a wide variety of dishes and also get some feedback. This is a photo and is the one non-culinary plug that I'm going to do. But Polka Dog, who's based in Boston and has some storefronts across the region, they have been working on a green Monster pet treat that people can purchase for cats and dogs. It's a lot of fun. Again, we focus on the culinary side, but I had to share something that my cat personally loves and is a favorite present that I love giving away to people. And lastly, and I'm going to transition into Dr. Bradt's conversation after this, this is the Crab Trapper House of Tamworth Green Crab Bourbon that really made waves as the first easily available green crab product to hit the marketplace. New Hampshire Sea Grant worked with House of Tamworth to produce this bourbon. It is a sipping bourbon. It might be a little bit expensive, but is one of my favorite gifts to sample with people. It also has this really unique flavor profile that I think kind of emulates like a low country boil, definitely a sipping whiskey, but a lot of fun. And this was from a little dinner. This photo is from a dinner that I hosted with some friends in Mid-Coast, Maine, where we cracked open our first bottle, and it was such a treat. If you have any questions about cooking with green crabs, if you have any ideas or you want to reach out, feel free to shoot me a message at maryparks@greencrab.org. We have a ton of recipes on our website. And also, if you head over to our homepage, you'll find a whole list of restaurants that are currently featuring green crabs on their menu. We update this list about twice a month, and there are tons in the greater Boston area, including a couple that are not far from you, where you can go dine at a restaurant and eat some green crabs yourself. And with that, I am going to pass the mic over to Dr. Gabriela Bradt. And again, feel free to let me know if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mary. Really appreciate that. Dr. Bradt, just give us a moment here. Let me see if Joby wants to say a word or someone from the team. Joby, do you want to say a couple things real quick? Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Sharon.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming tonight. Two great organizations. We have North and South River Watershed and the Green Crab .org. Two great organizations trying to do a great thing. So what we tried to do tonight with the help from Sharon St was use some of her crab stock and crab broth. And what I did was I just made a couple dishes for you guys to try. Right now you got a crab cake coming out. It's a regular crab cake, but what I did was I reduced the green crab broth down to almost a paste, mix that in with the crab meat, and made a crab cake out of it. And then we're gonna have some green crab ramen. We heard about Chef Yuji. We were actually at his restaurant Saturday night and had some of his green crab ramen there on his 20-course dinner, which is excellent. But that was one of the courses he did. And he gave me some tips on doing the ramen for you guys tonight. So we do got a ramen coming for you after that. And we also have some crab rangoons, which I did the same thing. I reduced some of the broth down almost to a paste and mix that in with some king crab meat and some cream cheese and scallions to make a rangoon out of it. So you get a couple different tastes of a couple different things you can do with it. And again, I can't wait for Sharon to get this to market. We carry her clam broth here. I can't wait to carry the green crab broth here and to help people get it, to use it in their home cooking. It's not that difficult. It's fun. We do a lot of things with it. So again, thank you for coming and hope you guys have an informative night.
Thanks, Shelby. All right. I guess while that is going on, we could probably, if you're ready, Dr. Bradt, I can introduce you, and then while the tastings are happening, we can listen to you. So I would like to, we're really excited to have Dr. Gabriela Bradt here, Extension State Specialist at the New Hampshire Sea Grant, and she's going to discuss some research on green crabs in the Gulf of Maine and touching on their invasive impact and recent findings. So, Dr. Brad, we're really excited to have you here. Thanks so much for your time. And feel free to take a few moments to get your screen share going, and we'll go from there. Oh, I don't think we can hear you quite yet, Dr. Brad.
Sorry, technical difficulties. I'm not sure what's happening. So give me a second.
Not a problem. I will take this time. Thanks so much to all of you out there on Zoom. We've got about 90 people tuned in online. We're really hoping that this experience will be meaningful for you as well. So I know I'm sorry you can't be here in person to take part in the samplings and all that, but all of you out there, we really appreciate you tuning in. The next 6 lectures will all be virtual only. And so you won't be in competition with the live audience. So, but thanks again for tuning in.
Brian, can you see it now?
Yes, I can. That looks fantastic.
Excellent. All right. So hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm always game for talking about green crabs. Like Brian said, I am Gabriela Bradt, and I am the Fisheries Extension Specialist for New Hampshire Sea Grant and UNH Cooperative Extension. And you'll quickly find out that all of us in the green crab world all know each other and refer to each other and work with each other pretty closely. So you'll find that I will be referencing Kelsey as well, and so on. But I'm actually going to try and give more of an overview of what the work that we've been doing at New Hampshire Sea Grant since 2015. And when I was working on this today, I realized that we're coming up on our 10th anniversary of the creation of the New Hampshire Green Crab Project, which is essentially a multi-clawed, as Mary said of her work, project that is working on solutions to tame an invader. And very briefly, again, the European green crab is really one of the most wanted, well, not most wanted, but most invasive species on the USDA and US Fish and Wildlife invasive species list. And like Mary said, it came over from Europe in ballast water, but a very long time ago. So the New England or the Northeast population here is very well established and basically entrenched. So we go back and forth and saying, well, is it naturalized, or, is it still persona or crab non grata type thing? It's the latter, by the way. And it was first detected in New England in the early 1800s. So we've had over 200 years to try and figure out how to tame this invader. And must say, we haven't done such a great job. And as a result, it has successfully invaded the U.S. East Coast and into Canada. And then in the 1980s, there was a second invasion on the U.S. West Coast, which has been garnering a lot of attention in the last several years. And I'll go into that in a little bit. There are very few places where this crab has not invaded itself. Primarily, that has to do with the environments are too inhospitable. It's just not. They do have an amazing tolerance for heat and cold and salinities and pHs and being out of water, etc. They live very nicely in my garage for weeks on end without anything except some seaweed. And but for whatever reason, in some of those subtropical areas, they're not doing super great. So maybe climate change might have a little bit of a positive effect. So anyway, okay, so why have we failed so badly up here in the East Coast? What have we been doing about this nuisance species for the last 200 years? Well, until recently, at least since I started working on this, not much. In the 1960s, there was a warning. There was a scientist up in Brunswick, Maine, that basically predicted that as water temperatures rose in the Gulf of Maine and just globally, that we were going to have more trouble with invasive species and especially the green crab, and that we needed to really pay attention, because once water temperatures warmed up and long, very, very cold winters stopped happening, which today I don't believe is really true, but um, essentially that their populations and their numbers would explode, and that expansion into other into other spaces would happen. So people took that sort of with a grain of salt, and since then there have been fits and starts with looking into mitigation measures, but to date no states have succeeded in implementing any long-lasting effective measures. And like Mary had referenced, the shellfish industry in New England, but particularly in Maine, has suffered millions of dollars and billions of dollars in lost revenue due to the invasive green crab, due to their predation and sort of their, damage to the ecosystems that they invade, not only in terms of competition and lowering biodiversity, but also because they physically perturbate all of the environments that they're in. So they love to dig, they love to uproot eelgrass, they eat everything in sight. And so they definitely cause not only fisheries losses, but also ecologic and economic impacts that are very, very costly. To date, the federal government has done very little for the East Coast, as we are basically seen as you've had 200 years and you're a lost cause, and they're here. And so, any research that has been done through grants, but not necessarily any federal appropriations or even state appropriations for specifically combating this nuisance species. Recently, in the last 5 years or so, though, the federal government and state governments in Washington, especially in Washington state, have put aside many millions of dollars to try and mitigate that invasion, as it is also seen to be sort of in the early stages of the invasion that can potentially benefit from a very concerted and intense effort in trying to stop that invasion. So the problem, obviously, on the East Coast has not gone away, and in fact, it is getting worse as the populations have increased, and actually their expansion more northward and even more westward has also increased as ecosystems have become more green crab friendly. Part of the reason I even came into this, in full disclosure, I'm actually not a crab biologist. I'm a squid biologist, a different decapod, and I really don't like crabs very much. So this seems very funny to me that this ended up being 10 years of my life. Is primarily has to do with the work that I do with the New Hampshire fishing industry and the fishing industry in general. And the problem that they came to me with was, what are these crabs? How do we get rid of them? They bring me no money, and they take away my time, and they eat my bait, and I can't even sell them. Can you help? And so, as a Sea Grant agent, my job is to try and help and help sort of troubleshoot or come up with solutions to some of these questions. So that got my researcher brain thinking, well, I know nothing about green crabs. Let's do a little research. What is out there? And here we have, a lot of biomass. We have this great resource. As far as I can tell, just because you're an invasive doesn't mean that you're inedible. So is there any way that we could turn this into an alternative source of revenue, or even just, boosting a little bit of income for fishermen? But how would people eat them? Is there any other fishery that is similar? And we have a blue crab fishery that, is gangbusters in the South, and people, blue crabs are bigger, but they're not necessarily meatier, but they are incredibly lucrative. but the delicacy there is in the soft shell form. So, all right, all crustaceans actually molt. So let me start doing some research into just sort of basic green crab biology. When they molt, how, can we tell when and where they molt? And so I started there, and with no money and one intern, I sort of delved into this rabbit hole. And as a result of that, this sort of New Hampshire green crab project was born. And I use the word multi-pronged, but I do like yours, Mary, the multi-clawed initiative, which is really looking at research and outreach to do four things: to monitor, investigate, research, and develop. And so for monitoring, we were really trying to figure out location and timing of crabs that were in this quote unquote pre-molt or molting phases of development, right? So when are they going to molt? Can we tell when they're molting, and where? Is there what's sort of the spatial and temporal distribution of these crabs in the Northeast, more specifically in New Hampshire? And the reason I say looking for pre-molts is that while I realize that we want to know more about population dynamics and distribution and densities, I was really, since I was trying to figure out a marketable size, something that would bring my fishermen some extra cash. I wasn't really interested in all the little itty bitty ones. I really wanted to know if they're, where the ones that I could actually molt and sell were, and at what time of year. And so that the monitoring aspect is wonderful because it can actually bring awareness to invasive species, especially green crabs, to all ages and all levels of education. Here I need all eyes, in the intertidal and out in the water. And so this was a way to educate the public, educate students, educate fishermen on the issue, and to help monitor this. The other aspect of the New Hampshire Green Crab Project is to investigate the feasibility of a soft shell crab, quote unquote, fishery and market as a strategy for population control. I'm sure you have at this point all heard, if you can't beat them, eat them. Well, that's sort of the basis for this component of this project. And in order to be able to do that, we definitely needed to delve more into research of, can we even tell when they molt? Can we even tell how they molt? Can I look at a crab and say, yep, this one's going to molt in 2 days? Blue crabs have a very easy telltale sign when they're ready to molt or bust out of their shell. On their back swimming legs, they get a bright red line, which is essentially just the old shell tearing away from the new shell. And of course, green crabs have those signs, but they're very, very, very subtle. And it took a very long time and about 800 gigabytes worth of memory on my computer and photographs to be able to figure that out. And also going and learning from the Europeans, from the Venetians, on how they have been doing it for centuries with their green crabs. And we were also working on figuring out how to then take all of that, all of that environmental information, biological information, and then putting it to work to produce soft shell crabs, how to do it, where to do it, and then taking that and, putting it into practice. So transferring that technology to fishermen or anybody who was interested in doing that. And then as part of all of that, to bring it all together, was to continue developing interest in not only consumers, that this is okay to do and to eat and to ask for, but also to fishermen, to aquaculturists, and people who, purveyors of seafood. Could this be, a marketable product? Not only soft shell green crabs, but then also the hard shells, of which we have a lot more. We really think that New Hampshire Green Crab Project, and then all the work that our partners and collaborators have been doing for, since I came in on the scene, um, it's really sort of an amazing, excellent opportunity for innovative solutions, along with mitigation efforts. It's one of those stories where if we can figure it out and get people to sort of, drink the green crab whiskey Kool-Aid, that we could really have tremendous impact, with the goal of, with several goals. One of the, some of them being, yes, let's mitigate these populations enough so that other things can come back. But also, there may be an economic boon to it. There's a new sustainable seafood product that can be harvested in your own local, in your own local waters. But also it is an endless source of research questions that could be transferred to other invasive species. Commercialization and development of markets, for something that we have so much of, like how do we use this, this biomass, right? We can eat them. There's a bait market for the tautog and other toothy recreational fish, right? And then somebody brought up in the chat, are there other alternative uses? Can we use it for compost? Can we use it for dog treats? Can we use it for pet feed, for aquaculture feed? What else could we use it for bioplastics? The answer is yes. It's just we need an infusion of money and facilities and infrastructure to be able to do that, and that's coming along. It can also bring about some positive economic and ecological changes, as I've mentioned. And it's a really sort of, I hate to say it, but kind of a charismatic invasive species, right? Like people are really drawn to this story, and it's almost something that people feel like they could potentially do something about, and that, it's not fait accompli. There's a lot of potential for collaborative research, participatory or citizen science, and technology transfer. It's a great mechanism for mentorship at all stages of learning, from K through 12 to PhD level, and so on. And then also, many avenues for economic development. Since the start of this project in 2015, this is just a little bit of what we have accomplished. We started from nothing. We didn't know even where to really find them, during the year. Everybody said they were everywhere, and yet I put my trap down and I didn't catch anything. And it took a little while of sort of trapping all over the place to figure out, okay, there's a seasonality. They move. They're not, their males are, here this time of year, and female, then they move out, and then the females move in, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of dynamics that we had to figure out. But we conducted that research. We figured it out. And then we started using that research to try and produce softshell crabs and do culinary research with partner organizations and restaurants. We established the first sort of monitoring green crab hunts that bring in everybody from April to October along the seacoast of New Hampshire, and you go out for an hour and you count as many crabs as you can and note everything from, are they male, female, what's the size, what color are they soft, are they hard, do they have eggs? And we've compiled that data since 2018. We've also held an international green crab working summit, and we're just trying to figure out how to get more money to hold another one. Mary and I have now done 3 workshops at the Maine Fishermen's Forum with other partners, and we're doing another one in a few weeks. New Hampshire Sea Grant has created the Green Crab Guide. It's a field guide and a handling and processing guide, and also it has recipes. So if anybody needs a link to that, just let me know. It is kind of, sort of that go-to resource for people. We've also produced harvesting invasive green crabs. We've had 10 interns. My most favorite grad student of all time, Kelsey Meyer, Russ, is coming up next. She's done a lot with this. We have taught, at least New Hampshire Sea Grant has taught 10 fishermen on how to produce softshell crab. We continue to develop culinary markets and working with chefs. We have a full exhibit at the Seacoast Science Center in Rye, New Hampshire. More and more fishers and harvesters are beginning to target green crabs. There is one legit new business, Shell and Claw, with Mike Macy, that is actually producing soft shell green crabs and bringing them to restaurants and markets, along with providing bait for recreational fisheries. And then, sort of like Mary mentioned, the creation of this weird green crab whiskey, which was a really, really fun project. And it really, like I said, it's one of those charismatic animals, right? And it has really caught the attention of a lot of people. It went viral, it went global. And it basically, all I did for the summer of 2022 and 2023 was do interviews on this whiskey. So maybe it was just because it was booze. And very quickly, I just want to touch on the other research that is being done by some of our partners and at UNH. It's not just all fishery development and getting people to eat weird things. Kelsey will, expand on this, but she's definitely working at the intersection of invasive species and green crabs with emerging aquaculture operations and oyster farms, and how those two things can coexist or not, especially in Great Bay, New Hampshire. Manomet is one of my biggest partners, and they have been doing similar work, but they've been doing long-term intertidal monitoring surveys that encompass all stages of green crabs since 2018, at 3 different sites in Brunswick, Maine. And they do it 3 times a year. And if I could have shown you this graph, you could basically see between 2018 and 2021, the populations were holding fairly steadily, and then they sort of like quadrupled in 21 and 22, and now we're starting to see them decline again. And that definitely seems to correlate with water temperature. And so, we're keeping an eye on that. And then we've mentioned eelgrass. Eelgrass is, sort of disappearing here in the Northeast, and Manomet has started looking at green crab trapping in Casco Bay in eelgrass to try and determine why, if green crabs are contributing to that loss, and is it a possible stressor and a decline and a reason for decline on the eelgrass beds. What's interesting is that they also have found that the catch per unit effort of their trapping is significant lower than it has been in other trapping efforts and areas, which, okay, so what does that mean? Are they going away? Is it because there's no more eelgrass? So they're trying to tease that out. But at the same time, they've also seen more big crabs and more males than females. Oops, I'm going back. And then very quickly, what's next? We have so much on our plate, and this is only a little bit of my job, but I'm hoping to really take that great green crab hunt citizen science data and putting it into an interactive dashboard and make it accessible to anybody who's interested in that data. I have been working with the West Coast and other Sea Grant programs to implement either similar programs and also to address research needs. We keep working more and more with fishermen in Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts, and also oyster farmers and other aquaculturists to establish green crab fisheries and markets. Also working with the Sea Grant Law Center in order on how we could open those markets and expand these efforts within a regulatory framework. And definitely trying to do more outreach events. Mary Mary and I and Manomet tried a green crab week several years ago, but Mary kind of finally pulled it off this year. So maybe continuing that trend and continue to develop more markets and alternative uses. And if we can make crawfish a thing and their boils, I think my next thing to work on is to try and do the same thing and have green crab boils be something people are doing often here in the Northeast. Thank you.
I really appreciate your time and knowledge about this, as well as everything that you've been doing on this important topic. So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to move things right along. There will be some time for a Q&A live at the end, but I'm going to go ahead and Kelsey, if you are ready, I'll go ahead and introduce you, and it's okay if you need a moment. Joby is going to start to send out the next dish. I think we have got 2 more dishes coming. And so those next ones are coming out right away. And but our next and final speaker for the night is Kelsey Meyer. She is a University of New Hampshire PhD candidate in marine biology, and she is part of the Dr. Bonnie Brown Ecogenetics Lab, and she is studying the dynamics of green crabs and oysters in the Great Bay Estuary in New Hampshire. And so, Kelsey, if you're ready, it looks like your screen share is almost ready to go. And the floor is yours whenever you are ready. So thanks so much for joining us tonight.
All right, thank you so much for having me. Hopefully my PowerPoint is up and running.
Yep, it looks great.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I'm Kelsey Meyer. I'm a graduate student at the University of New Hampshire. My dissertation focuses a lot on the dimensions of green crabs and oysters, specifically in Great Bay Estuary, New Hampshire. That was mentioned a few times tonight. That's a really important estuary in the state of New Hampshire. It's home to a lot of different species such as eelgrass, fish, but I argue most importantly, oysters, both wild oysters and also a booming oyster farming industry. But tonight I kind of want to just give like a snippet of part of my dissertation, which was surveying oyster growers on their perspectives of green crabs. So why do this? So just to give a little bit of background, so oysters, they're extremely important ecological bivalves. They're filter feeders, so they help a lot with water quality and help making our waterways cleaner. Oyster reefs kind of act as like a natural jetty, which can help with shoreline protection from things like waves and sedimentation. Oyster reefs also provide habitats for a lot of different species. A lot of times juvenile fish will actually live in oyster reefs. It's important to note as well that oyster farms actually mimic all these ecosystem services. So oyster farms provide all these great benefits as well, the same as wild oysters do. Also, in general, aquaculture is a really important avenue to help supply the global demand for seafood, specifically oyster aquaculture. Also is a huge demand for seafood, not just in the US, but globally. And in New Hampshire, oyster aquaculture has grown vastly over the past few years. In 2009, there was only 2 oyster farming businesses, and now fast forward to today, we have about 12. Oyster restoration has also grown vastly in New Hampshire, with many acres already restored and more projects of oyster restoration continuing, which is really great. But unfortunately, wild oysters, their populations have declined over the years. This is due to disease, overharvesting, but also invasive species as well. And potentially, the European green crab may have negative consequences for oysters. Both Mary and Gabby mentioned how green crabs have been affecting shellfish industries which definitely isn't good. So kind of doing research to help kind of hone in on how green crabs may be affecting shellfish, specifically oysters, both kind of wild, restoration, and as well as oyster farms. It's really important to see how these green crabs interact with our oysters. So I really wanted to do research to kind of look more into that, specifically involving our oyster farming industry. And research has shown that incorporating, social science into conservation work can greatly advance not only research objectives, but questions and the overall product of the research. So I definitely want to do that with my dissertation. And in general, oyster growers, they are the experts in the field. No one knows, that body of water, that product better than oyster growers. So their knowledge is extremely valuable. So I really wanted to kind of gain their perspective to help improve my research and do work that would also help them as well. So for my methodology, so I had an anonymous online survey. This was approved through the IRB. And so this was distributed to all the New Hampshire oyster growers back in 2022. So again, the intent of this study was to kind of tease out their perceptions of green crabs, maybe other related potential impacts that could be affecting their farms, also along with maybe potential research interests, and also kind of pinpointing, the research I want to do, is that helpful to them? So I had 13 questions. It was a mix of open-ended and multiple choice questions. The open-ended questions kind of just asked for about 2 to 3 sentences, and the multiple choice was kind of like a choice A, B, or C. And this took about 10 to 15 minutes for them to complete. So it didn't take a lot of time, and the outcome of it was definitely important. So these surveys are, I'm hoping, is something that more researchers will do to kind of help research and also help out kind of those end users at the same time. I had 9 oyster growers participate, so that represents about half the industry, which is really great because I'm kind of getting a good sense of what these oyster growers are feeling about green crabs, other issues, and their research interests. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all the questions and answers, but I wanted to at least give an example of a multiple choice question, and as well as an open-ended question I asked them. So this was actually the first question I asked them. So currently for my dissertation, I'm investigating the distribution, abundance, and diet of green crabs at reef and farm sites at Great Bay Estuary. How beneficial would these data be for your farm activities? So again, I really wanted to see what type of research is important to them, and is this research a benefit to them? Because that's also really important. So 100% saw some benefit, and specifically 22% thought this was a huge benefit to their farm activities, and 78% judged there was some benefit to this type of research to their farm activities, which is really great because this is what the rest of my dissertation was. So it would have been a real bummer if they all said no. Really great and kind of good example of the type of questions and data you can get from sending out these surveys. So an example of an open-ended question. So please describe in 2 to 3 sentences how green crabs interface with your farm. For example, are they directly on your farms? Are they in the surrounding area around your farms? Do you notice them certain times throughout the year? So again, trying to kind of pinpoint how green crabs may be interacting with their farms. Specifically, are they in their gear? Are they around the farm? And is there certain times of the year that you might see them in, larger groups? So overall, respondents indicated that they noticed green crabs are present on the farm, and that crabs were found commonly throughout the operating season. Some respondents even mentioned they see them year round. And then kind of 2 responses stood out to me. So one respondent said that crabs were observed highest in the late summer, and overall in the warmer months, they saw them more. And another stated they found crabs in their trays, but they were not sure if they were trying to consume their oysters or if they were maybe hunting other prey that may also be in the trays. So kind of getting a good indication how green crabs may be interacting with their farms and in their gear. And just kind of some themes and lessons learned overall. So overall, the oyster growers saw a benefit with trapping for green crabs, mostly on the mitigation side. I did ask a question if they would consider trapping for bait as a, like marketing for bait fishery. A couple said potentially, but a lot of people also mentioned that it would have to depend on that kind of economic value and time investment. But maybe with more research, that could be something in the future. Respondents indicated that they noticed green crabs are present on the farm, in the gear, and in the surrounding area. And they do spend time kind of dealing with the nuisance of these green crabs in their gear, having to remove them, things like that. They also mentioned their concerns that green crabs are a threat to smaller oysters, specifically kind of oyster seed they're really concerned with, and kind of those juvenile smaller oysters, concerned that green crabs may be consuming these smaller oysters. They also believe green crabs are a nuisance to their farm, but interestingly, they also believe there may be bigger issues at hand. This included tunicates, oyster drills, and a couple participants also mentioned worms and mud blisters. So although green crabs are definitely a nuisance to their farms, I also learned in the survey that there's other things affecting their farms as well. So these are things I also wanted to incorporate in my research as well. And in general, the oyster growers believe green crabs had the potential to be an issue to their farms. So definitely conducting research to kind of help mitigate that and learn more is definitely important. And in general, surveying, such as oyster growers, kind of allows for that integration and building those relationships between researchers, regulators, and growers, and kind of create those stronger communication lines. So that's something I really wanted to do. I wanted them to really be involved and also kind of use these perspectives to help improve my research. And with this survey, I was kind of able to kind of do the rest of my research, trapping at these oyster reefs and oyster farms to kind of get a sense where they're congregating, and also investigating the diet of green crabs, really trying to learn what these green crabs are eating. Are they eating oysters? Are they eating other important species like eelgrass or other fish? And are they eating these other nuisances to these farmers? Are they eating tunicates? Are they eating drills? Are they eating worms? So that's something I really want to do as well. And then also kind of looking at green crab and oyster farm oyster interactions. Are there different sizes of green crabs that can get into different sizes of oysters? So because of this survey, I was able to kind of confirm and further develop these other projects, which is really great. So I really hope, we start to see more researchers getting our end users, such as oyster growers, more involved in the research, because they have a lot of important things to say. They have a really great perspective. They know, the area better than anyone. So I really feel like these surveys and involving these end users is really important and can really kind of help research grow and improve. And so that was kind of just a snapshot of this project, but you can read the full paper. It's in the Frontiers in Aquaculture Journal. And I'm also happy to share the link with Brian so he can send out to folks as well. And I want to thank you all for having me tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. We really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us tonight. And I will for sure include any links in the email out to everyone. And that also includes the recording from this. I know the slides, the presentation may have been a little hard to see for some of you. This will all be recorded and edited, and that way it'll be available to you. So you can go through and look at all this, as well as all the links that all of our presenters have shared. So between Dr. Brad, Mary Parks, and Kelsey, we really appreciate your time tonight. We are going to do some Q&A here. I'm probably going to close out in a moment the Zoom, and we're going to finish up with one final sample here. So we really appreciate the three of your time tonight. And could we just have a big round of applause here for our presenters? So thanks to the three of you tonight, and any questions that these folks will provide, I can share with you at a later time. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. All right, I believe Joby has one more dish that is coming out. I think it's coming out right now. I can smell it. It's the Rangoon. I can see it all the way across the room. So that's fantastic. I know Joby's going to want to say a couple things at the end. And so, but for right now, I would like to pass it back to Sharon St. Right now. Thanks.
Joby's done a great job with the broth, showcasing a couple of different ways to utilize it, both in a soup and as a seasoning in the crab cake. There's also Lori Hepworth and Michael Harder here from Edible Southeastern Magazine. They brought some free copies for you. I do have a recipe in there for a Portuguese stew that's based on a dish I had in New Bedford. This crab broth is it's a sweet crab broth. It goes really well with like a tomato-based dish, which is what I have in there. And I also have samples of clam broth for you with recipes. So please take one of those and try it out. And I will, if you email me, email@sthours.com, I will send you a sample of our crab broth when it's ready. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Bunch of samples right here, so make sure you grab those on the way out. And I know downstairs we do have some NSRWA swag bags with our latest newsletter in there. So if you didn't grab one, they're down, I think by the lobsters. They're hanging out down there on your way out. So in a moment, I'll have Joby. Oh, right there. Yeah, perfect timing, Joby.
So I hope everyone enjoyed such informative evening tonight. It was great. It's great to hear so many different perspectives and people who know so much about this issue. Explain to us what we do. So the last thing you get coming out tonight is crab rangoon with some pink crab legs in it and some green crab noodles down. I hope you enjoy the ramen, the stock. The broth was awesome. Just such a good, deep stock flavor. It's great. I can't wait till you get a powder form, Sharon. So let's start selling it. So, but again, thank you all for coming tonight. And if you have any questions about how to make stuff with green crab or any seafood question at all, whenever you come into the market, all the kids downstairs, anyone who works here, they can absolutely help you out with any recipes or make it a lot easier for you if you have any questions or you're afraid to do certain things. Anyone behind the counter, if it's a 16-year-old kid or me, we can probably give you some tips and easy things to make dinner. So please come and enjoy some fresh seafood stuff. And enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks so much, Joby. Yeah, big round of applause for Joby. This is the second time that we've been here, and we definitely want to continue this going forward. This is a great venue for us. Support your local fisheries and businesses, and I know that Joby's staff would definitely appreciate any tips. So there should be a tip jar back there. So make sure we're putting some cash in there as well. And there's drinks and stuff to purchase. So thanks so much, everyone, for coming out. This is part of the 8-week series. This is the first one. It begins and ends with a live event. The last one in March, the final 8th lecture, will be trivia night back at Stellwagen Brewery, another live event. That's free. You're welcome to show up there. And so next week, we are excited to be on the 22nd. It'll be a Zoom only lecture. The next 6 will be Zoom only, is entitled Rainbows on the Wing, Dragonflies and Damselflies. Swooping, soaring, and perching, dragonflies have been on our planet for an estimated 250 million years. An estimated 160 species of odonta, which is dragonflies, can be found in Massachusetts. Blake Dinius, the Plymouth County entomologist, will discuss the ecology of dragonflies, their adaptations, needs, and obstacles. So join us next week for election. Use the same link that you did before. And before we close out, a big thank you to Joby, a big thank you to Mary, Sharon, Kelsey, and Dr. Bradt for joining us, as well as a big thank you to Clean Harbors and the Massachusetts Cultural Councils of Hanover, Hingham, Marshfield, Rockland, Scituate, and Norwell. Thank you to your continued support for our WaterWatch lecture series, and thank all of you for coming here tonight and supporting what we do. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we will see you all next week. I'm Brian with the North and South Rivers Watershed Association. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you later. Bye, Mom and Dad. Bye.